Comment on the video, where are people watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. The story kicks off with an unforgettable scene that sets the tone for the entire episode, a humorous yet eye-catching introduction featuring none other than Bernice Buttercup. Dressed in a vivid pink swimsuit that practically screams extravagance, Bernice struts into view like a walking, talking stereotype of over-the-top beach glamour. Her confident gait and unfiltered personality capture the attention of everyone nearby, and her presence immediately promises that nothing ordinary will unfold today. On this particularly bright morning, Bernice makes her way to the community center where she unexpectedly crosses paths with Reverend Elijah Thompson, a well-respected black priest known for his gentle and inviting demeanor. The setting is charged with a delightful absurdity. Here is Bernice, adorned in her eye-popping swimsuit, exuding exuberant energy, and there stands Reverend Thompson, calmly greeting congregants and passers-by with his warm smile and measured words. Their very different worlds collide in a moment that is as comical as it is symbolic, two figures from disparate walks of life, each representing a distinct slice of the neighborhood's colorful tapestry. Bernice, known for her flamboyant style and no-nonsense attitude, launches into a conversation that is both brash and humorous. With a quirky sense of humor, she playfully teases the Reverend about his choice of attire for the day, a nod to the time-honored traditions of the church contrasted with her own modern and bold fashion sense. Her remarks are delivered with a wink and a mischievous smile, hinting at her belief that life should be enjoyed with a healthy dose of irreverence. Meanwhile, Reverend Thompson, ever the epitome of calm and kindness, responds with a good-natured laugh. His warm chuckles and gentle repartee reflect decades of experience in dealing with a wide array of personalities, and his willingness to engage with Bernice on her terms serves to diffuse any potential tension. As their conversation unfolds, the interplay between Bernice's brash confidence and Reverend Thompson's measured wisdom becomes apparent. Although their interaction might seem trivial on the surface, a mere exchange of playful banter, it subtly hints at larger themes. Bernice's bold approach and unfiltered outlook contrast sharply with the Reverend's commitment to dignity, compassion, and tradition. The encounter is a microcosm of the broader cultural and generational intersections that define our community. It is both a moment of levity and an invitation to look beyond appearances. By the end of this first act, the stage is set for the myriad events to come. Bernice Buttercup, with her signature pink swimsuit and larger-than-life personality, has left an indelible impression, while Reverend Elijah Thompson's amicable response has only deepened the intrigue of the day's unfolding drama. This spirited introduction is a perfect blend of humor, cultural flavor, and the promise of unexpected twists, elements that will steer the narrative in wildly entertaining directions as the story continues to unfold. Not long after that memorable introduction, the calm of our neighborhood was abruptly disrupted by the rapid pace of digital gossip. Early one sunny morning, as I was tending to my own business, a flood of messages began pouring into the local WhatsApp group. Neighbors, who normally exchanged cheerful greetings and daily updates, started reporting something unexpected. Reverend Elijah Thompson was locking up the community pool. The messages were urgent and came in rapid succession. One post stated, "Hey, did you see? Reverend Thompson has shut down the pool. Something's not right." Soon, others chimed in with their own observations and speculations, and the chat exploded into a virtual hubbub of suspicion and disbelief. What could be the reason for such an unusual action? The community buzzed with ideas. Some whispered that the Reverend was hiding a secret, while others speculated that he was testing new security measures for the church event he'd mentioned earlier. Among the flurry of texts, one message in particular caught my eye. It described how the pool had been clearly marked off and locked by a heavy-duty padlock and even a chain barrier, all actions that struck many as overzealous for a simple community amenity. The tone of the messages was mixed, some were incredulous, some amused, and a few downright critical. It was as if everyone was trying to piece together a mystery from digital fragments. I watched as the digital conversation steadily shifted from mild curiosity to outright suspicion. Longtime residents who were used to the gentle order of our suburb began discussing the incident with dismay. They wondered if this was an isolated decision by the Reverend or an indication of a deeper conflict between local authorities and community members. The hashtag Poolgate even started trending briefly in our chat, lending an air of absurd seriousness to the situation. For my part, I wasn't entirely surprised. Reverend Thompson, beloved for his friendly and calm demeanor, had always impressed me with his reliable character. Yet, the very idea of him taking control of a community asset like the pool without clear explanation was enough to fuel a firestorm of theories among the residents. As the messages piled up, it became evident that the incident was much more than a simple scheduling oversight. It was a spark for debate about the balance of power in our small community. By the end of that hectic morning, the WhatsApp group had transformed into a forum of accusations, bewilderment, and anxious planning. In a community where everyone valued order and familiarity, this unexpected turn of events left a tangible tension in the air. The digital murmurings promised that soon, answers would come to light, but meanwhile, the stage was set for conflict, misunderstanding, and the unfolding of events that none of us could have predicted. Amid the digital storm of speculation, Reverend Elijah Thompson finally stepped forward to clear the air. It turned out that the locking of the community pool was not an act of mischief or hidden malice. Reverend Thompson, who had built a reputation for his warm and approachable nature, explained that he had booked the pool for a private church event, a baptismal service meant to celebrate new beginnings and bring the congregation together. Gathered before a modest but devout crowd, the Reverend's explanation was both simple and dignified. He detailed how all the necessary permits had been obtained, and how the use of the pool had been planned as a sacred space transformed for this special occasion. The decision to temporarily secure the pool was made well in advance, designed to ensure that the baptismal service could proceed without interruption and in a suitably solemn setting. In his announcement to the community, delivered over the same WhatsApp group that had been abuzz with rumor, Reverend Thompson calmly outlined the plan. He explained that for the morning of the baptism, the pool area would be exclusively reserved for church members and their guests. The padlock and chain barrier were not symbols of exclusion but measures to safeguard the integrity of the event. He reassured everyone that once the service concluded, the pool would reopen for general use, and all community access would resume as usual. Despite the clarity of his explanation, the digital chatter did not fully subside. Many residents, still processing the unexpected turn of events, expressed mixed reactions online. Some were relieved to learn that there was a legitimate reason behind the closure, while others remained skeptical, unable to shake off their suspicions of ulterior motives. Nevertheless, Reverend Thompson's statement served as a turning point. It shifted the focus of the conversation from wild theories to a more fact-based discussion about community scheduling and the proper use of shared amenities. For me personally, the revelation provided both reassurance and a reminder of the delicate balance inherent in community living. Even revered figures like Reverend Thompson had to navigate the complexities of public perception and administrative protocol. In that moment, I realized that even routine decisions, however well-intentioned, could spark controversy if communication broke down. The baptismal service, meant to be a moment of spiritual renewal, had inadvertently thrown our neighborhood into a state of confusion and mild chaos. As the day progressed and the church event went off without a hitch, many of the earlier concerns gradually eased. The WhatsApp group buzzed less frantically, and the tone shifted toward cautious acceptance. Yet, the episode left an indelible mark on our community's collective memory, a reminder that even familiar faces could find themselves at the center of unexpected drama, and that clarity, when finally provided, was crucial to restoring order and trust. Even after Reverend Thompson's clear explanation regarding the baptismal service, not everyone in the community was convinced. Leading the charge was Bernice Buttercup, a bold and outspoken figure known for her flamboyant attire and forthright manner. With a mix of indignation and determination, Bernice marched up to Reverend Thompson one sunny afternoon, her eyes fixed with a steely resolve that brooked no contradiction. Standing by the now open community pool, which had once been a peaceful gathering spot for families and neighbors, Bernice confronted Reverend Thompson directly. "Reverend, I demand to know why you locked up this pool without any warning," she announced in a voice that resonated with both anger and disbelief. Her tone was sharp, laced with irritation that suggested this was not the first time she had felt wronged by what she perceived as an abuse of power. Reverend Thompson, ever the epitome of calm and kindness, listened patiently as Bernice launched into a tirade. He explained once again that the pool had been booked for a private church event, a baptismal service that required temporary closure of the facility for the safety and sanctity of the service. Yet Bernice, whose skepticism ran as deep as her determination to protect what she saw as a communal right, was unyielding. "That may be your excuse, Reverend," she retorted sharply, "but locking up a community resource without prior notice is illegal and unacceptable." The confrontation grew tense as more neighbors began to gather at a safe distance, drawn by the rising voices and the spectacle of the dispute. Some onlookers sympathized with Bernice's frustration, recalling previous incidents where community spaces had been subjected to unilateral decisions without public input. Others admired Reverend Thompson's consistent diplomacy over the years and felt that Bernice's approach was more about theatrics than genuine concern. Bernice's argument focused on the perceived injustice, the idea that a public amenity had been seized for private use without any communication, leaving the rest of the community in the lurch. She questioned the propriety of using religious events as a pretext to restrict access, accusing Reverend Thompson of overstepping his bounds. "This isn't just about a pool, it's about transparency and fairness," she insisted, her voice rising with every word. "I deserve an explanation, and I won't rest until I get one." Reverend Thompson maintained his composure despite the onslaught. In a measured tone, he reiterated the details of the event, his careful acquisition of the necessary permits, the clearly communicated schedule to church members, and his assurance that the pool would be reopened immediately afterward. However, Bernice's ire was not so easily assuaged. She clutched her phone, which was already buzzing with messages from the neighborhood WhatsApp group, and waved it as though it were evidence of a conspiracy. The exchange became a microcosm of the larger debate playing out in our community, the conflict between individual authority and collective rights. Bernice argued that no one, not even a respected reverend, could unilaterally decide the fate of a facility meant for everyone. In response, Reverend Thompson calmly pointed out that the measures taken were temporary and fully compliant with local regulations, designed to ensure the smooth conduct of a sacred service. As the argument escalated, voices grew louder and the atmosphere became charged with both passion and tension. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some taking sides, others simply watching the drama unfold with a mix of amusement and concern. Despite the mounting pressure and the increasingly inflammatory language, Reverend Thompson's calm and steady demeanor never wavered. His gentle insistence on following proper procedures only underscored the contrast between his methodical approach and Bernice's fiery protest. By the time the confrontation drew to a close, the issue was far from resolved in Bernice's eyes. Her demands for a more democratic process in managing community amenities remained unmet, and her discontent continued to simmer just beneath the surface. The encounter, intense and emotionally charged, left an indelible impression on everyone present, a stark reminder that even well-intentioned actions can spark controversy when they disrupt deeply held expectations of transparency and fairness. After the heated confrontation between Bernice Buttercup and Reverend Elijah Thompson, the tension in the community only intensified. Despite the Reverend's repeated assurances and clear documentation that the pool had been lawfully reserved for a private baptismal service, Bernice's outrage was far from quenched. Standing beside the edge of the community pool, Bernice continued her tirade with unwavering conviction, insisting that what had been done was nothing short of an abuse of power. "Reverend," she declared with vehemence, "you claim to have all the permits and paperwork, but this is an outright violation of my right to enjoy community resources. I demand that you either unlock the pool immediately or face the consequences." Her voice, trembling with indignation, echoed across the yard and drew a small crowd of attentive onlookers who supported her cause. Reverend Thompson, maintaining his courteous composure, calmly reiterated the legality of his actions. "Bernice, I have followed every protocol. The pool was booked for a church event, and I obtained all necessary permits in advance. Once the event is over, the pool will be open to the public as usual," he explained evenly, his tone imbued with the serenity that had long defined his ministry. Yet, Bernice was not appeased. Her face reddened with fury, and she shook her head as if to dismiss his explanation entirely. Determined not to back down, Bernice escalated the situation further. "I'm not buying your story, Reverend Thompson. I will call the police if you don't unlock that pool right now. This is illegal, and I won't tolerate being deprived of a community space that belongs to all of us." Her threat was delivered with such certainty that it sent a ripple of unease through those who were beginning to question the true nature of the conflict. The crowd murmur grew louder as neighbors, each with their own perspective on the matter, began to form opinions. Some sided with Bernice, arguing that the pool was a shared community asset that should never be subject to unilateral restrictions, while others felt that Reverend Thompson had simply managed a private event in good faith. The debate was not only about the pool but also about the nature of public resources and the responsibilities of those in positions of leadership. Reverend Thompson tried once more to explain, citing documents and permit copies that he had on hand. However, Bernice's anger was now too inflamed to be soothed by logic or legal proofs. "You say I'm wrong, but I know my rights," she insisted. "If you don't release the pool immediately, I guarantee I'll have the police on this matter, and I won't stop until every single violation is scrutinized." In a final, defiant gesture, she brandished her smartphone, promising to record every moment of what she claimed was an infringement upon community rights. This standoff between protocol and protest reached a fever pitch as both sides dug in their heels. For Reverend Thompson, the situation was a miscommunication that had spiraled out of control. For Bernice, it was a battle for the very soul of the neighborhood, a clash between what she believed was her inherent right to access shared amenities and what she saw as an overreach by authority figures. The exchange left a palpable tension hanging in the air, a tension that foreshadowed more heated confrontations to come. For many onlookers, the incident was a clear reflection of wider societal debates about individual rights versus collective responsibilities. But for those directly involved, it was a personal fight. Bernice's determination to call the police was not just about the pool, it was about standing up to what she viewed as a misuse of power, even if it came from someone she had long respected. As the confrontation wound down, it was clear that neither party was willing to compromise. Bernice's threat was a line drawn in the sand, one that would soon lead to dramatic consequences. The stage was set for the next chapter of this unfolding drama, where the clash between personal conviction and institutional authority would escalate even further. Unable to contain her fury any longer, Bernice Buttercup took the drastic step she had warned about. Fueled by anger and a deep sense of injustice at what she believed was the illegal locking of the community pool, she pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911. What began as a desperate cry for help quickly spiraled into a chaotic call that would forever alter the course of events in our neighborhood. In a state of panic, Bernice's voice trembled as she explained the situation to the emergency dispatcher. "I'm calling because Reverend Thompson has locked the community pool, and I believe this is a deliberate act of illegal seizure," she exclaimed, her words punctuated by frantic pauses and bursts of incoherent sound. The frantic tone of her report made it clear that she was not simply upset, she was terrified, and she believed that she was in imminent danger. Despite the urgency in her voice, the dispatcher maintained a calm, measured tone, asking for details and trying to ascertain the full picture of the incident. As Bernice recounted her version of events, the dispatcher's experience allowed her to pick apart the details. She inquired about the location, the exact actions Reverend Thompson had taken, and whether there was any physical evidence of wrongdoing. Over the course of several minutes, it became increasingly apparent that Bernice's account was fraught with inconsistencies. From my discreet vantage point, I watched as the events unfolded with a mix of relief and apprehension. I knew that I had taken no illegal action, the pool had been locked for a clearly planned church event, and all proper permits were in order. Yet, Bernice's 911 call painted an entirely different picture, one of a community resource being misappropriated by a trusted leader. Her portrayal was one of exaggerated peril, meant to cast Reverend Thompson in a negative light, and to rally the residents against him. The dispatcher, trained to discern truth from hysteria, began to question the narrative. Phrases like, "deliberate act of illegal seizure," were met with requests for verification that Bernice could not provide. As the call progressed, it became evident that her claim was less about a genuine threat and more about personal indignation taken to an extreme. Despite her continued outbursts, the dispatcher noted down every detail with a cool objectivity that only years of handling emergency calls could provide. Meanwhile, back at the scene, a small crowd had begun to gather. Neighbors exchanged glances and whispered in hushed tones as they witnessed Bernice's escalating panic. Some expressed sympathy, while others doubted the veracity of her story given her history of overreaction. The air was thick with a mix of tension and disbelief as the 911 call was relayed to local authorities. As the call drew to a close, Bernice's voice, now quiet and wavering, fell silent over the line. The dispatcher promised that officers were on their way, but also noted the inconsistencies in the report. While the urgency of the situation had initially prompted a full police response, it was now clear that a thorough investigation would be needed to untangle fact from emotion. In the aftermath of the call, the community was left in a state of mixed shock and curiosity. The 911 call, as dramatic as it was, became the catalyst for a series of events that would soon draw law enforcement directly into our small neighborhood dispute. For me, it was both a vindication and a warning. The drastic step taken by Bernice confirmed that her sense of entitlement and hyperbolic nature were reaching dangerous new heights, and that the next chapter of this drama was nearing. Before long, the situation escalated further when local law enforcement finally arrived on the scene. Amid the flurry of concerned whispers and the residual tension from Bernice's frantic 911 call, a pair of police vehicles pulled up to the community pool. Leading the response was Chief Earl Johnson, a seasoned officer known not only for his dedication to duty but also for his long-standing friendship with Reverend Elijah Thompson. Chief Johnson stepped out of his vehicle with a calm, authoritative presence that instantly commanded respect. Clad in a crisp uniform and with his eyes scanning the scene, he approached the group gathering by the pool. Bernice, still visibly agitated from her earlier outburst, was now at the forefront, her voice echoing off the surrounding houses as she continued to vehemently assert that Reverend Thompson's actions were illegal. As Chief Johnson listened to Bernice's increasingly disjointed rant, his initial expression of concern gradually gave way to one of disbelief. He noted the tremor in her voice, the exaggerated tales, and the almost theatrical manner in which she recounted the events. "Ma'am, let's just take a deep breath and go over what happened step by step," he said in a measured tone, his voice firm yet compassionate. Despite the chaos, his demeanor was a reminder that law enforcement was there to uncover the truth, not to take sides. Reverend Thompson, standing somewhat apart from the heated exchange, offered a quiet, respectful nod to Chief Johnson, an acknowledgement of mutual trust built over many years. The chief's familiarity with the Reverend's character lent an extra layer of credibility to his approach. As the officer questioned Bernice, he carefully and methodically probed for details, asking for specifics about the time the pool was locked, what she witnessed, and whether there were any physical signs of foul play. Each response from Bernice, however, became increasingly erratic and fraught with inconsistencies. Meanwhile, the gathered neighbors watched in silence. For many, Chief Johnson's presence was a welcome sign of order being restored. They had grown tired of the endless gossip and the sensationalism that had gripped the community over what should have been a routine administrative matter. Yet, in the midst of this, the tension was palpable as residents waited to see how the situation would resolve. As the investigation unfolded right there in front of the pool, Chief Johnson's calm professionalism was on full display. He reviewed the relevant permits and documents that Reverend Thompson had provided as proof that the pool had been legally reserved for the baptismal service. With every question he asked, it became clearer that the orderly explanation was in stark contrast to Bernice's hyperbolic claims. The chief's measured responses and insistence on clear evidence were a turning point in the conversation, gradually deflating the frenzied atmosphere created by the earlier 911 call. When it became apparent that Bernice's account did not match the documented facts, Chief Johnson took a firm stand. "Ma'am, please understand that making a false report is a serious offense," he explained, his tone even but unyielding. He reiterated that while it is always our duty to ensure community safety, it is equally important not to misrepresent the facts and incite unnecessary panic. His pointed remarks highlighted not only the legal implications of her actions but also the broader responsibility of every resident to uphold truth and trust. By the time the investigation was complete, it was clear that the police supported Reverend Thompson's position. With the evidence carefully considered and Bernice's account found to be unreliable, Chief Johnson assured everyone present that the matter would be handled appropriately. His intervention not only dispelled much of the surrounding rumor mill but also provided a sense of closure to a conflict that had rattled our normally peaceful neighborhood. The steadfast presence of Chief Johnson, and his ability to restore order by focusing on facts rather than sensationalism, left a lasting impression on everyone involved. For me, it was another reminder that even in the midst of personal conflicts and neighborhood disputes, the truth has a way of emerging when guided by fairness and diligence. Following Chief Johnson's clear and measured explanation, the tone of the encounter shifted decidedly. With the facts laid out and Bernice's exaggerated claims increasingly undermined by the undeniable evidence, Chief Johnson took the opportunity to issue a stern warning. In a calm but assertive manner, he informed Bernice that making a false report to 911 was not only irresponsible but a criminal offense. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "misrepresenting events to emergency services is a serious matter and will not be tolerated. Your actions have caused unnecessary disruption and risk to our community." As the officer spoke, a hush fell over the gathered crowd. Neighbors exchanged glances, some nodding in approval of the chief's forthrightness while others looked on with a mix of surprise and disapproval. Bernice's face, once flushed with anger, began to betray a deep sense of indignation mixed with embarrassment. Chief Johnson did not stop there. Recognizing that part of Bernice's outburst was laced with racially charged language, he took a moment to address this aspect as well. "It is important," he stated, "to treat everyone with respect and avoid language that is discriminatory or inflammatory. Our community is built on mutual respect, and such language only serves to divide us further." The implications of his words echoed through the small gathering. The warning was clear. Not only was Bernice on thin ice for her false report, but her choice of words had also crossed a line that jeopardized the harmonious fabric of our neighborhood. The chief's professional yet uncompromising approach underscored that the laws were there to protect all citizens and that misuse of these laws would be met with appropriate consequences. Following the warning, the legal process moved swiftly. Bernice was issued a formal citation for filing a false report and disturbing the peace. The citation was delivered with all the gravity that the situation demanded, and despite her continued protests of innocence, the matter was now firmly in the hands of the law. For many in the audience, the citation served as a bittersweet moment of accountability. While it was unfortunate to see a neighbor face legal repercussions, it was also a necessary step to restore order and prevent further incidents of this nature. The chief's actions were not driven by malice but by a commitment to ensuring that all residents adhere to the same standards of truthfulness and respect. In the end, the warning and subsequent citation marked a turning point in the day's tumult. The neighborhood, which had been rife with sensational claims and emotional outbursts, began to settle into a more measured tone. Chief Johnson's firm intervention served as a powerful reminder that while passion and frustration are understandable in conflicts, the misuse of emergency services and inflammatory language has consequences that ripple far beyond a single individual's grievance. Even after the stern warning and the issuance of a citation, Bernice Buttercup was not ready to accept defeat. Standing amid a small crowd of curious onlookers outside the community facility, she continued to protest her innocence with a vigor that bordered on defiance. Despite the clear evidence and the authoritative words of Chief Johnson, Bernice maintained that she was the aggrieved party and that the actions taken against Reverend Thompson were unjust. Her voice, though quieter now than in the earlier frenzied moments, carried an undercurrent of stubborn anger. "This is a misunderstanding," she insisted repeatedly, her arms gesticulating wildly as she attempted to reclaim control of the narrative. Neighbors listened as she recounted her version of events, her tone laced with exasperation and disbelief. To her, every word she had spoken was entirely justified, even if the evidence and the police report suggested otherwise. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some residents, who had grown tired of the chaos and the ever-shifting rumors, expressed relief that the situation was finally being addressed. Others, still sympathetic to Bernice's passionate outburst, murmured words of encouragement, though their voices were drowned out by the collective sense that the facts had, undeniably, tilted in favor of the Reverend and the community's well-being. Amid the murmurs, a few neighbors discreetly recorded snippets of her tirade on their smartphones, aware that the incident would soon be a talking point for the entire block. Over time, as the reality of the situation became indisputable, Bernice's protests began to appear increasingly isolated, a last stand against an overwhelming tide of evidence and rationality. Despite her vocal dissent, the legal process was clear. Her citation for making a false 911 report and disturbing the peace would stand, and no further legal action was immediately threatened. The community's sentiment gradually shifted toward restoring calm and moving past the ordeal. To many, Bernice's continued protest only underscored the notion that her perspective was less about genuine grievance and more about an unyielding unwillingness to accept responsibility for her exaggerated portrayal of events. As the minutes turned to hours, the energy surrounding her protest slowly dissipated. The encounter, once marked by intense uproar and high emotions, began to settle into a more somber recognition that the boundaries of truth and accountability had been firmly re-established. Bernice's unrelenting insistence on her version of the story left her more isolated than empowered, and the whispers around her began to carry an unmistakable tone of disillusionment. In the end, Bernice's continued protest, though spirited, could not change the outcome of that fateful day. The citation would remain a record of her actions, and the neighborhood's collective relief at finally restoring order would overshadow the remnants of her resistance. It was a moment when the community's desire for peace prevailed over individual obstinacy, leaving Bernice to contend with the consequences of her inflated claims. The simmering tensions that had been building all day finally reached a critical breaking point when Bernice Buttercup, fueled by a mix of desperation and indignation, attempted a physical assault on both Reverend Elijah Thompson and Chief Earl Johnson. In a scene that unfolded with a shockingly rapid escalation, Bernice lunged forward as if to grab hold of the Reverend during a moment of brief distraction, her actions intended to forcefully reclaim what she believed was her due. Witnesses watched in horror and disbelief as her assault spiraled out of control. The situation, once a matter of heated words and official citations, now took on a violent dimension. The air was filled with frantic shouts and the sounds of a struggle that had erupted in broad daylight. Neighbors rushed to the sidelines, their previously animated discussions now turning to cries for calm and safety. Chief Johnson, ever the embodiment of measured authority, responded immediately to the sudden physical threat. With training honed over years in service, he moved quickly to subdue Bernice without causing her serious harm. Recognizing that her actions posed a real risk of escalating into further violence, he drew his taser, a tool intended to neutralize without excessive force, and deployed it decisively. The crackle of electricity filled the tense air as Bernice was momentarily overwhelmed by the shock, her resistance faltering almost instantly. In the aftermath of the arrest, there was a heavy silence. Bernice, now subdued and restrained, was carefully escorted from the scene by the police. The dramatic use of the taser, while startling to many, was met with a murmur of approval from those who had grown weary of her repeated disruptions. The local authorities made it clear that while self-defense was paramount, no one was above the law when it came to physically endangering their neighbors. Reverend Thompson, though visibly shaken by the turn of events, maintained a dignified composure. His concern for Bernice was evident even as he supported the actions of the police. In his gentle voice, he expressed hope that this incident would serve as a turning point, that the aggression and misguided anger would finally subside in favor of a more respectful dialogue. The entire community was left to process the shock of Bernice's violent outburst. News spread quickly through word of mouth and social media, and the dramatic event sparked widespread conversations about the need for civility, accountability, and the proper ways to resolve disputes. While many were relieved that order had been restored, the incident also underscored the risks that arise when personal grievances are allowed to escalate unchecked. In the days that followed, law enforcement processed the arrest and filed the necessary charges for criminal trespassing and assault. For those of us in the community, it was a sobering reminder that even in our otherwise peaceful neighborhood, the potential for chaos lurked when boundaries were repeatedly violated. Bernice's arrest marked the end of an era of disruptive behavior, a decisive moment when the rule of law reaffirmed the sanctity of personal space and the responsibilities we owe each other as neighbors. After Bernice Buttercup's arrest, the tumultuous events that had rocked our neighborhood gradually subsided. In the quiet that followed, Reverend Elijah Thompson and the rest of the community began to return to normal life. The painful episode, as extraordinary as it had been, finally gave way to a renewed sense of peace and stability, a comforting reminder that order can be restored even after the most explosive disturbances. Reverend Thompson, ever the pillar of calm in our community, resumed his daily activities with a gentle grace that inspired those around him. His efforts to explain the situation and abide by all legal procedures had not only proven his integrity but also helped mend the fractures that had divided many residents. As the days passed, the whispered controversies and heated debates that had once consumed our local WhatsApp group faded into memory, replaced by a collective determination to heal and rebuild. Neighbors who had once been drawn into the drama now expressed relief that the crisis had been resolved. Conversations began to focus on practical matters: how to better communicate, how to respect one another's private spaces, and how to ensure that future disputes could be handled with calm and civility. In one particularly moving moment at a community meeting, several residents acknowledged that Bernice's misguided actions had, in an unintended way, underscored the importance of tolerance and respect. For Reverend Thompson, the resolution was bittersweet. While he had weathered the storm with dignified patience, he also recognized that the incident had exposed some deep-seated issues within our community regarding misunderstanding and judgment. He later remarked that the ordeal was a valuable lesson in empathy, that true respect involves listening to each other, even when emotions run high. His calm reassurance helped many see that conflict, when resolved through dialogue and understanding, could lead to growth and unity. As for me, the fallout served as a personal reminder of the fragile balance between freedom and responsibility. I felt a sense of vindication not in the punitive outcomes, but in the restoration of order and the reaffirmation of community values. Bernice had, through her reckless behavior, inadvertently taught all of us a lesson about tolerance, about not jumping to conclusions based on sensational claims or superficial judgments. The long, tumultuous day ended with our neighborhood slowly settling back into its quiet, familiar rhythm. The community pool reopened, the local WhatsApp group buzzed with more mundane topics, and, most importantly, harmony was gradually restored. Though the memory of the chaos would linger as a cautionary tale, it also became a symbol of the strength we have when we work together to uphold fairness and respect for every individual. In that final, reflective moment, it was evident that the ordeal had indeed changed us, for the better. We learned that true progress comes not from confrontation but from understanding, and that every person, no matter how flawed, deserves a chance to learn and grow. Our community was once again united, the lesson of respect and tolerance firmly etched in all our hearts.